This is for educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as an educational material. Good day everyone. My name is Cyrix Ricacho and today we are gonna talk about food security. So, what is food security? Based on the 1996 World Food Summit, food security is defined when all people, at all times, have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. Just like a balanced meal, food security consists of four crucial portions, each playing a significant role in ensuring everyone's access to nourishing foods. So, what are the four dimensions of food security? So, the first one is the food availability. Food availability is the availability of sufficient quantities of food of appropriate quality supplied through domestic production or inputs. This includes food aids. This section represents the physical availability of food, ensuring that there's enough food to meet everyone's nutritional needs. It's about producing, importing, and distributing enough food to go around, filling our plates with a variety of options. So the next one, we have a food access. Food access is the access by individuals of adequate resources or entitlements for acquiring appropriate foods for a nutritious diet. Entitlements are defined as the set of all commodity bundles over which a person can establish command given the legal, political, economic, and social agreements of the community in which they live, including traditional rights such as access to common resources. So, this part represents a family's ability to obtain foods like having a seat at the table, ensuring everyone has the resources, income, and accessibility to reach the food available. And it's all about making sure everyone can pull up a chair and enjoy a satisfying meal. So next, so next, we have utilization. Utilization of food through adequate diet, clean water, sanitation, and healthcare to reach a state of nutritional well-being, where all psychological needs are met. This brings out the importance of non-food inputs in food security. So in other words, food utilization, this ensures that we don't just have any food, but food that give us all the nutrients we need for our health and well-being. Lastly, we have the stability. To be food secure, a population, household, or individual must have access to adequate food at all times. They should not risk losing access to food as a consequence of sudden shocks, like an economic or climatic crisis, or cycle events. So, like seasonal, food, insecurity. The concept of stability can therefore refer both the ability and access dimensions of food security. So, in other words, stability of food systems. This is the foundation, ensuring that previous portions remain constant over time, providing a safety net against unexpected challenges. It's like a solid base that keeps the entire meal secure and resilient against any disruptions when all these portions are present and well maintained. The plate of food security is complete, ensuring that everyone has enough nutritious food accessible to them, allowing them to thrive and live like a healthy life. And that is food security.
Global food security and impact of COVID-19. First is global food security depends on interconnected factors that ensures food availability, access, and sustainability, but COVID-19 intensified vulnerabilities across these areas. Two is agricultural productivity. Advances in technology have boosted yields, yet during COVID-19, labor shortages, disrupted supply chains, and limited access to inputs reduced agricultural productivity. Sustainable practices became even more critical as farmers face economic pressures. Three is climate change. Ongoing climate disruptions, drought, floods, and unpredictable weather continue to impact farming. COVID-19 added pressure by making resources for climate adaptation less accessible, leaving farms in high-risk areas for more exposed to climate-related losses. First is economic access. The pandemic led to job losses and reduced incomes, increasing food insecurity for millions, especially in low-income communities. With economic instability, people struggle to afford nutritious food, highlighting the need for fair economic policies to protect food access. Five is political stability. While the pandemic did not directly create new conflicts, it worsened instability in region already affected by political unrest. Disruptions to international aid and funding strained food programs, underscoring the need for strong governance to keep food system as stable.
In continuation with Mr. Legaspi's discussion, next is the population growth. The Philippines, with its rapidly growing population, faced significant pressure on its food systems even before the pandemic. As the population continued to expand, the country struggled to balance agricultural production with environmentally sustainability. This challenge was exacerbated by the pandemic, as increased unemployment and poverty rates led to a surge in food insecurity. Next is the trade policies. The Philippines' reliance on imported food products, especially during times of crisis and pandemic, highlighted the significance of trade policies in food security. While trade liberalization can increase access to a variety of food items, it also exposes the country to a global price fluctuation and potential supply disruptions. The pandemic disrupted global supply chains, leading to increased food prices and shortages in the Philippines. Next is the nutrition and food quality. Despite being an agricultural country, the Philippines grappled with various forms of malnutrition, including undernutrition and micronutrient deficiencies. The pandemic further exacerbated these issues, as economic hardships and disrupted food systems made it difficult for the Filipinos to access nutritious foods. The pandemic highlighted the importance of healthy diets in boosting immunity and overall health. But many households were forced to compromise on the food quality and quantity to make ends meet.
Good day, sir. I am Cadet Demeterio, and I will be explaining food security in the Philippines during the COVID-19 pandemic. So, the food security in the Philippines during the COVID-19 pandemic faced numerous challenges, one of which includes its supply chain disruption. The COVID-19 pandemic significantly disrupted global and local supply chain, including those food. The Philippines, which is heavily reliant on imported goods and with a complex agricultural system, was particularly vulnerable to these disruptions. Strict lockdowns and quarantine measures imposed to curb the virus's spread hindered the movement of goods, including food, both domestically and internationally. Port closures, reduced operational hours, led to delays in the arrival of imported food items, impacting supply. A decline in the labor force due to illness, quarantine, and fear of infection affected transportation and logistics operations. Farmers also face difficulties in accessing essential inputs like fertilizers, pesticides, and seeds due to supply chain disruption and transportation challenges. The pandemic also limited the ability of farm labor, particularly migrant workers, impacting agricultural production. Farmers struggled to sell their product due to reduced market access, transportation and limitation, and fluctuating demand. Food processing and manufacturing plants were forced to temporarily shut down or operate at reduced capacity due to infections among workers and supply chain disruptions. Social distancing measures and health protocols within factories limited production and its capacity, affecting the supply of processed food products. Many retail outlets, including grocery stores and supermarkets, were temporarily closed or had to reduce operating hours, limiting consumer access to food. An increased consumer demand for certain food items led to stockouts and price hikes, exacerbating food insecurity. A last mile delivery challenges, such as transportation restrictions and labor shortages, hindered the distribution of food products to consumers. Another challenge faced by the food security of the Philippines includes a decrease in income and economic access. The COVID pandemic significantly affected food security in the Philippines by reducing incomes and limiting economic access. Strict lockdowns and quarantines led to widespread job losses, reducing working hours and decreased wages, particularly in the informal sector. This decline in income made it difficult for many households to afford adequate food, especially as food prices increase due to supply chain disruption. Furthermore, Furthermore, economic access to food was hindered by reduced purchasing power and limited opportunities to sell goods or services. Small businesses, particularly those in the food industry, face challenges in operating and generating income. This reduced economic activity further limited the availability of food and increased food insecurity. The combination of decreased income and limited economic access exacerbated the food security crisis in the Philippines during the pandemic, particularly for vulnerable populations such as low-income households, informal workers, and marginalized communities. Another challenge faced by the food security of the Philippines is its food production. The COVID-19 pandemic significantly disrupted the Philippine food production process, leading to many challenges. Farmers face difficulties in accessing essential inputs such as fertilizers, pesticides, and seeds due to supply chain disruptions, transportation challenges, and increased prices. The pandemic limited the availability of farm labor, particularly migrant workers, impacting agricultural production, especially in labor-intensive crops. Extreme weather events, exacerbated by climate change, further disrupted agricultural production, leading to crop losses and reduced yields. Food processing and manufacturing plants were forced to temporarily shut down or operate at reduced capacity due to infections among workers and supply chain disruptions. Social distancing measures and health protocols within factories limited production capacity, affecting the supply of processed food products. Movement restrictions, bottlenecks, and increased transportation costs hindered the transportation of agricultural produce from farms to markets. Farmers struggled to sell their produce due to reduced market access, transportation limitations, fluctuating demand, and price volatility. Stores closures, reduced operating hours, and panic buying limited consumer access to food. These disruptions collectively affected the overall food production process, leading to reduced agricultural output, increased food prices, and limited food availability for consumers. The pandemic highlighted the vulnerability of the Philippine food system and the urgent need for more resilient and sustainable agricultural practices.
Increase food prices. So this statement explains that food is getting more expensive. So this makes it harder for people to buy the food they need, especially for poor families. They have to choose between important things like rent or medicine. So this can lead to people eating less or not eating healthy food. So this increase in food prices is called inflation. That means the a general price level of goods means and services is rising over time. So when inflation is high, it weakens the purchasing power of money. So it means that you can buy less with the same amount of money. So imagine you used to buy a kilo of rice a 50 pesos before, but now it costs 60 pesos. So this means you can buy less rice with the same amount of money. So it is a simple example of inflation. So the fifth one is the government interventions and aids. So this statement explains that the Philippine government is working hard to help people who are struggling to buy food. So they're doing this in a few ways. Then first, they're giving money to poor families and that they can buy food. Then the second one is they're directly giving food to people who needed it the most. Then the last one is they're helping farmers to sell their products directly to people, so which can help lower food prices. So then one of the example of this is a program called Kadiwa ni Ana at Kita. So this program helps farmers to sell their products directly to consumers or people that who needed it. So cutting out middleman and making food more affordable. So this is just one of the many ways the government is trying to address food insecurity in our country. So the last one is the food imports. So it explains this statement that the government is buying food from other countries like rice to make sure there's enough food for everyone in our country. So especially when there's not enough food grown here. So but this can be risky. So if other countries have problem growing foods like drought or war, it can make food more expensive and harder to find in our country. So for example, in the Philippines is that buys a lot of rice from Thailand, and Thailand has bad year for rice. So the price of rice in our country could go up or go higher. So this would make it harder for us Filipino families to afford this important food. So it affects the food security.
What are the threats to global food security?
The first one is climate change. Extreme weather like droughts, floods, and heat waves make it harder to grow food. Climate change also reduces water supplies, which crops the livestock and need to thrive. The next one is water shortage. Agriculture uses a lot of water, but with less water available in many areas, it's harder to grow enough food. Number 3 is soil damage. Poor farming practices, deforestation, and chemicals can harm the soil, reducing its ability to produce food over time. Number 4 is economic risks. Economic shocks like COVID-19 pandemic can reduce incomes, increase unemployment, and raise food prices. This makes it harder for people, especially low-income families, to afford nutritious foods. Number 5 is poverty. Even if food is available, many people can afford it, making it difficult for lower-income families to get enough nutritious food. The last one is pests and diseases. Crop pests and livestock diseases can spread quickly and damage food supplies. Global trade and climate changes make it easier for these threats to spread. So these challenges often interact and make each other worse. So addressing them together is essential for achieving global food security. So if we don't care of the earth, it won't take care of us. Food security starts with a healthy planet.
5 components of food security. First is availability. Sufficient quantities of food must be produced, imported, or distributed within a country or region to meet the population's needs. Second is access. Individuals must have economic and physical means to obtain food. This includes having the resources, income, and employment, and the ability to reach food sources, markets, and distribution networks.
Is food security is possible? Actually, yes, but achieving it requires tackling a range of challenges and working on multiple fronts. Food security means that all people at all times have access to enough, safe, and nutritious food to lead healthy lives. For this to happen, several key areas need attention. First is sustainable agriculture. So the agriculture must be productive but also protect the environment. This involves adopting sustainable practices like crop rotation, soil conservation, and efficient water use. And also climate smart practices are also crucial as climate change threatens food production with more frequent droughts, floods, and changing growing seasons. The one example of sustainable agriculture are drip irrigation in India. In dry parts of India, farmers are using drip irrigation systems that give plants water directly at their roots. This saves water and helps crops grow in areas with little rain. These systems are helping farmers grow more food without wasting water. The second is reducing food waste. Food waste, roughly 1/3 of all food produced in loss or wasted. Reducing food waste could improve food security by making more food available without the need for increased production. This includes waste reduction at every level from farms and factories to supermarkets and households. The third one was fair distribution. Food distribution is a major issue, especially when some regions produce more food than others. This requires improving transportation infrastructure, reducing trade barriers, and ensuring equitable access to food globally. And one example of fair distribution, food banks in the United States food banks in the United States collect extra foods from stores, farms, and the third is supporting small farmers. Small scale farmers grow a lot of world's food, especially in developing countries. However, these farmers are often poor and struggle to make a good living. Helping small farmers by providing better access to loans, new technology, and fair prices for their products can boost food production and improve their lives. Support all farmers in example are access into mobile markets in Kenya. In Kenya, an app called Twiga Foods connects small farmers with urban markets, and the farmers can sell their produce to customers in the cities without needing middleman a middleman, so they earn more and food can get to more people quickly. The fifth is policy and governance. So the government play a huge role in food security by enacting policies that encourage food production, reduce poverty, and manage resources sustainably. This includes social safety nets to support people during times of crisis like droughts or economic downturns. Good policies examples are rice subsidy programs in Philippines. The government of the Philippines has a program that offers rice at lower prices for people with low income. This helps families afford food even if they face financial difficulties. And lastly, the adapting to climate change. So the climate change is making food security harder by causing unpredictable weather, like heavy rains or long droughts. We need to invest in research for new types of crops that can survive in harsh conditions. Climate change resilient farming will help us protect our food supply despite the changing climate. So example of adapting the climate was in crops in drought resistant crops in Africa. The scientists have developed types of maize corn that can grow with less water. These drought resistant crops are being used in African countries that often experience droughts, helping farmers grow food even if difficult conditions. In condition, the food security is a big challenge, but it's possible if we take action. With sustainable agriculture, less food waste, fair distribution, support for small farmers, good policies, and smart ways to handle climate change, we can make sure that everyone has enough to eat. Working together, farmers, businesses, governments, and people around the world will help us reach this goal.
Utilization. People need access to healthy, safe food and must have the knowledge and skills to prepare and eat properly. Stability. Food security should be consistent over time, meaning people can rely on a steady supply of food, even during events like climate change or economic downturns. Sustainability. Long-term food security depends on farming practices that protect the environment and make sure food resources will still available for future generations.